The novel, Foundation, by Isaac Asimov, the first book in the iconic Foundation series, unfolds over several distinct historical periods, charting the initial centuries of the Foundation's existence. It begins shortly after the death of Hari Seldon, the brilliant psychohistorian who foresaw the collapse of the Galactic Empire and devised a plan to shorten the ensuing Dark Age from 30 millennia to just one. The narrative is presented as a series of novellas, each focusing on a critical juncture, or Seldon crisis, that tests the Foundation's ability to adhere to Seldon's meticulously crafted plan. Part 1. The Psychohistorians. The opening section sets the stage on Trantor, the sprawling capital of the Galactic Empire, now teetering on the brink of collapse. Hari Seldon, having successfully predicted the Empire's inevitable demise, stands trial for treason. His treason is the dissemination of psychohistory, a science that can predict the future of large populations, and his proposed solution, the creation of the Foundation. Seldon, however, is not seeking to overturn the Empire. Rather, he is attempting to mitigate the devastating impact of its fall. He explains to the incredulous members of the Committee of Public Safety that while the Empire's collapse is unavoidable, a dark age of 30,000 years can be reduced to a mere 1,000 years through the implementation of his meticulously crafted Seldon plan. Seldon argues that by establishing two foundations at opposite ends of the galaxy, the long period of barbarism can be significantly shortened. The first foundation, to be located on the desolate planet Terminus, will comprise the galaxy's leading physical scientists and historians, tasked with compiling the Encyclopaedia Galactica, a monumental compendium of all human knowledge. This project, seemingly innocuous, is in fact a cleverly disguised front for the true purpose of the Foundation: to develop and implement the Seldon Plan, guiding humanity through the coming millennia of chaos. Seldon emphasizes that the very awareness of the plan's existence would alter its course. Thus it must operate largely in secrecy, with key events unfolding at predetermined intervals, each representing a Seldon crisis. The committee, unable to fully grasp the complexities of psychohistory but unnerved by Seldon's predictions, exiles him and his followers to Terminus. This expulsion is precisely what Seldon intended, as it places the first foundation in a strategically isolated location, far from the direct interference of the crumbling empire. Hari Seldon then makes his final, dramatic appearance. Before his death, he leaves behind recorded holographic messages, strategically timed to appear at critical junctures in the Foundation's history. These Seldon crises are moments when the Foundation faces an existential threat, and Seldon's recorded messages offer a cryptic warning or validation, guiding the Foundation towards the predetermined solution. The first such message is said to appear 50 years after the Foundation's establishment. This initial setup establishes the core premise of the series: the battle between the preordained path of psychohistory and the apparent free will of individuals. Part 2. The Encyclopedists. 50 years after its founding, the Foundation on Terminus has indeed been diligently working on the Encyclopaedia Galactica. However, the local political landscape begins to shift dramatically. The once mighty Galactic Empire has receded, its central authority weakening, and its outer provinces degenerating into independent, warring kingdoms. Terminus, once a minor outpost, now finds itself surrounded by four such burgeoning kingdoms of the Anacreon sector: Anacreon, Smyrno, Loris, and Virgil. These emergent powers, lacking advanced technology and scientific understanding, covet the Foundation's superior scientific knowledge and technological prowess. The first Seldon crisis manifests as Anacreon, the most aggressive of the four kingdoms, begins to exert pressure on Terminus. King Leopold of Anacreon, under the sway of his ambitious and cunning prime minister, Venus, demands that the Foundation hand over its advanced technology and recognize Anacreon's sovereignty. The Foundation's directors, deeply engrossed in their academic pursuit of the Encyclopaedia Galactica, are largely oblivious to the true nature of the threat. They believe their intellectual and scientific importance will protect them, a naive assumption in a galaxy rapidly descending into barbarism. It is Hal Dornick, a young but shrewd Foundation historian and the protagonist of this segment, who begins to question the purely academic focus. He, along with his colleague, Salvor Hardin, a rising political figure, argues that the Encyclopaedia Galactica project is a mere distraction, a smokescreen for the true purpose of the Foundation. Hardin, recognizing the political rather than scientific nature of the crisis, challenges the complacent leadership. He coins the famous dictum, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." The critical moment arrives when the vault containing Hari Seldon's first holographic message opens. The message reveals Seldon's true intent. The Encyclopaedia Galactica was never the Foundation's primary purpose, but a necessary means to gather and maintain scientific knowledge until the proper time for the Foundation's true mission. Seldon confirms that the Foundation is not a purely academic institution, but a crucial step in the grand plan to restore civilization. He predicts that the immediate crisis will not be solved through military strength but through diplomatic and economic means. Following Seldon's holographic reveal, Salvor Hardin, having correctly anticipated the nature of the crisis and the inadequacy of the academic approach, successfully takes control of the Foundation. He navigates the diplomatic labyrinth, exploiting the internal rivalries among the four kingdoms and leveraging the Foundation's technological superiority. The Foundation's technology, particularly its mastery of atomic power, becomes a valuable commodity, a source of power and luxury that the surrounding kingdoms desperately desire but cannot replicate. Hardin shrewdly withholds this technology, using it as a bargaining chip and a means of control. He grants limited access to the technology, primarily to maintain essential services like power generation, but ensures that the kingdoms remain dependent on the Foundation for its maintenance and advanced components. This establishes a techno-religious hold over the superstitious and technologically backward kingdoms. By creating a new religion based on the worship of technology, with Foundation scientists as its priests, Hardin establishes the Foundation's dominance without resorting to direct military confrontation. The local populations, awestruck by the advanced machinery and energy fields, attribute divine powers to the Foundation scientists. This technological dependency, coupled with the religious dogma, allows the Foundation to exert significant influence, effectively neutralizing the military threat from Anacreon and the other kingdoms. The First Seldon crisis is averted not through force, but through cunning and the strategic application of knowledge. Part 3. The Mayors. 80 years after the First Seldon crisis, the Foundation has transformed from a purely scientific enclave into a thriving commercial and political power. Salvor Hardin, now the mayor of Terminus City and the undisputed leader of the Foundation, continues his shrewd policies. He has successfully integrated the four kingdoms into a sphere of influence, using trade and the techno-religious system to maintain control. Foundation-trained priests, imbued with the rituals and dogmas surrounding technology, effectively serve as agents of the Foundation in these peripheral worlds, ensuring loyalty and economic subservience. However, a new Seldon crisis emerges, threatening the delicate balance Hardin has painstakingly created. Anacreon, under the rule of its young and ambitious king Leopold I, grandson of the previous Leopold, attempts to break free from the Foundation's technological and religious hegemony. Stirred by the imperialistic ambitions of Prince Regent Venus, the same Venus from the first crisis, who survived and now seeks revenge through Leopold, Anacreon builds its own space navy, equipped with Foundation-supplied atomic weapons technology. They believe they can now challenge the Foundation directly. Venus, manipulating the young king, plans a full-scale attack on Terminus, hoping to seize the Foundation's technological secrets and overthrow its subtle dominion. The crisis presents a complex dilemma. The Foundation has no standing army of its own, relying solely on its technological and religious influence. A direct military confrontation seems inevitable, yet Hardin believes that the Seldon plan has accounted for this and that a true war would signify a deviation from the plan. Hardin, despite facing dissent from within his own council, particularly from the aging scientific elite who still resent his earlier political ascendancy, remains resolute. He orchestrates a complex counter-strategy. He understands that Anacreon's technological capabilities are still dependent on Foundation maintenance and knowledge. He relies on the ingrained fear of the sacred technology among the Anacreonian populace and especially its technicians, who have been thoroughly indoctrinated by Foundation priests. As Anacreon prepares its attack, Hardin allows them to power up their warship, the Leonori. However, at the critical moment, the Foundation's network of priests, working secretly through their religious channels, triggers a simultaneous general strike of all Foundation-trained technicians and engineers on Anacreon. More critically, they issue a spiritual injunction against using sacred Foundation technology for military purposes. This religious pressure, coupled with the technicians' fear of divine retribution and their reliance on Foundation expertise for repairs and maintenance, effectively cripples Anacreon's war efforts. The powerful warship, the Leonori, stalls mid-jump, its atomic engines failing. The Anacreonian fleet is paralyzed, and its command structure descends into chaos. Prince Regent Venus, facing utter defeat and humiliation, is forced to commit suicide. King Leopold I, recognizing the futility of resistance, is compelled to sign a new treaty that further integrates Anacreon into the Foundation's sphere of influence, placing it under even stricter control. The crisis is resolved without a single shot being fired by the Foundation, reinforcing the power of its technological and religious dominion. This victory solidifies Hardin's reputation as a master strategist and confirms the validity of Seldon's plan once more. The incident also serves as a stark warning to the other emergent kingdoms in the sector, firmly establishing the Foundation's unbreakable hold. Part 4. The Traitors. A century and a half after the first Seldon crisis, the Foundation's influence has expanded significantly, extending beyond the 4 immediate kingdoms. Its primary vehicle for this expansion is trade. The Foundation has developed a network of traders, independent merchants who travel to distant, technologically primitive worlds, exchanging the Foundation's advanced technologies for valuable local resources. These traders are more than just merchants, they are cultural ambassadors and covert agents, spreading the Foundation's influence and economic dominance. One such trader is Limar Ponietz, a cunning and resourceful individual. He faces a new Seldon crisis on the planet Asquan, a highly conservative world that rejects all foreign technology and ideology, clinging rigidly to its ancient customs and distrust of outsiders. Asquan's leaders, the Grand Masters, have imprisoned another Foundation trader, Eskil Gorev, for illegally distributing Foundation technology. They view technology as a threat to their traditional ways and their control over the populace. Ponietz arrives on Asquan to negotiate Gorev's release. He finds himself battling not a military threat, but a deeply entrenched cultural and ideological resistance. He understands that brute force or open confrontation will not work. Instead, he employs his cunning and the subtle power of Foundation technology. He identifies the Grand Master's scientific advisor, the skeptical and intellectually curious Lord Farrell, as a potential ally. Ponietz uses subtle psychological manipulation, demonstrating the practical advantages of Foundation technology without directly challenging Asquan's traditions. He introduces seemingly innocuous devices, like a stuttering detector, or a device that transmutes iron into gold. A clever illusion using advanced metallurgy and energy fields, to pique the interest of the technologically backward Asconians. He subtly corrupts Lord Farrell, appealing to his intellectual curiosity and ambition, offering him personal wealth and power through the illicit trade of Foundation gadgets. The crux of the crisis lies in the Asconian law against importing technology. Ponietz cleverly exploits a loophole. The law forbids importing technology, but not exporting it. He demonstrates that Foundation gadgets, though initially viewed as dangerous, can be immensely profitable. He bribes Lord Farrell with enough converted gold to make him wealthy and powerful within Asquan's rigid society. He then allows Farrell to use this wealth and influence to overturn the old laws, arguing for the economic benefits of trade with the Foundation. Through this intricate web of bribery, psychological manipulation, and clever legal maneuvering, Ponietz secures Gorev's release. More importantly, he opens Asquan to Foundation trade and influence, breaking down its isolationist policies. The crisis is averted not through war or overt political domination, but through economic penetration and the subtle subversion of cultural norms. The event demonstrates the adaptability of the Seldon plan and the Foundation's ability to overcome diverse challenges by leveraging its unique strengths. The traders become the spearhead of the Foundation's expansion, laying the groundwork for a new galactic economy. Part 5. The Merchant Princes. 200 years after the Foundation's inception, its influence has expanded to encompass a vast swath of the former imperial provinces, primarily through the economic power of its trade networks. The traders, once independent agents, have now evolved into powerful, merchant princes, amassing immense wealth and wielding considerable political influence. The Foundation's headquarters on Terminus remains the central authority, but the economic power now resides largely with these powerful merchants. The final Seldon crisis in the novel focuses on the rising power of the planets of the Corellian Republic, a militaristic state led by the ambitious and ruthless Commodore Asper. Corel has begun to manufacture its own nuclear power plants and weaponry, openly challenging the Foundation's technological monopoly and religious influence. They have also captured and executed several Foundation traitors, including a high-ranking agent named Lord Dorwin. This direct defiance represents a significant threat, as it suggests the Foundation's techno-religious hold might be weakening. Hober Mallow, a former independent trader who has risen through the ranks due to his shrewdness and uncompromising pragmatism, is sent by the Foundation to negotiate with Corel. Mallow is a new breed of Foundation leader, a realist who prioritizes economic power and political maneuver over dogma and traditional scientific pursuits. He represents a departure from the more idealistic leaders of earlier generations. Mallow arrives on Corel, ostensibly to negotiate a peace treaty and the release of captured traitors. However, he quickly realizes that Commodore Asper is not interested in compromise. Asper is driven by a desire to establish Quirrell as an independent power, free from Foundation influence, and to seize its superior technology. Mallow observes Quirrell's industrial capabilities and its fledgling nuclear technology, understanding that a direct military confrontation would be costly for both sides. Instead of fighting, Mallow takes an audacious and controversial step. He deliberately allows himself to be captured by Corellian forces, along with his personal atomic blaster, which is then publicly confiscated. He knows that the Condor will be unable to reverse engineer the sophisticated Foundation technology, and that Quirrell's homegrown technology is unreliable. His plan is to allow Quirrell to exhaust itself economically, trying to maintain its nuclear infrastructure, which is based on pirated and faulty Foundation plans. Back on Terminus, Mallow faces a political trial, accused of treason for allegedly abandoning the Foundation's principles and allowing its technology to fall into enemy hands. The trial is orchestrated by a powerful religious faction within the Foundation, led by prosecutor James Twirr and the fanatical councilman Publius Manlio, who believe Mallow has violated the techno-religious tenets by failing to wage war and uphold the sacred nature of Foundation technology. Mallow defends himself with ruthless logic. He argues that the Foundation's true power lies not in its military might or religious dogma, but in its absolute control over advanced technology and its economic implications. He reveals that Quirrell, despite its bravado, is utterly dependent on Foundation-supplied parts and technical expertise to maintain its nuclear power plants. Quirrell's attempts to replicate the technology have resulted in unreliable and inefficient systems. Mallow's strategy is a waiting game. He predicts that Quirrell's power plants will eventually fail, plunging the Republic into chaos and economic ruin. He allows the situation to play out, trusting in the inevitable technological and economic collapse of Quirrell. When the power plants on Quirrell begin to fail, resulting in widespread blackouts and industrial stagnation, the populace, having been accustomed to the luxuries of nuclear power, erupts in riots. Commodore Asper, facing a crumbling infrastructure and a rebellious populace, is left with no option but to plead for the Foundation's help. Mallow, now vindicated, demands complete capitulation. All political and economic control over Quirrell must be ceded to the Foundation. The crisis is resolved not through direct military engagement, but through an economic war, demonstrating the overwhelming power of the Foundation's technological monopoly and its ability to starve out any rebellious states. This victory firmly establishes the Foundation's dominance over its surrounding territories, marking the end of the interregnum and the beginning of a new era of Foundation supremacy. The novel concludes with the Foundation having successfully navigated its initial Seldon crises, each resolved without overt warfare, but through ingenious application of psychohistory's principles, be it political manipulation, economic leverage, or technological supremacy. The Foundation has grown from a vulnerable scientific outpost into a burgeoning economic and political power, laying the groundwork for its ultimate destiny as the nucleus of the Second Galactic Empire, precisely as Hari Seldon had foreseen. The individual stories highlight the constant tension between individual agency and the grand, predetermined path of psychohistory, leaving the reader to ponder the extent to which human actions are truly free.